Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be looking at an interesting little piece of news that I'm going to kind of highlight a few different things about this as we go forward. So it's kind of it's going to be what I'm about to talk about, plus a few other things that aren't really necessarily related to it. And that's that the show Creepshow, which is a Shudder exclusive currently, is apparently going to be airing on AMC later this year. Now, this is interesting in the sense that pretty much every other streaming service that we've seen has been mostly unwilling, unless they're directly related to a current television network like HBO Max or something like that. They don't transition their properties over to regular television. If anything, it goes the other way, that regular television properties get transferred over into streaming services. But Creepshow is an original Shudder series. It's a show that they paid for that is exclusively on their network. Now, according to this, the show itself will be airing, I believe, later this year. Probably, I'd guess it would probably premiere in the fall. That's when they have a lot of premieres and stuff like that. But it's only 6 episodes. It's going to be relatively short in terms of how long it's being aired. I would assume they'd air it around the same as Walking Dead and stuff like that. It kind of fits in with that type of in terms of a horror vibe. But like I said, the weird part about it is that you don't see other streaming services doing this. You don't see Netflix optioning out Stranger Things to television networks, or doing anything like that, or Hulu or Disney Plus for that matter. The Mandalorian isn't premiering on ABC this week. So I find that odd. I also don't. I'm fairly certain that Shudder is not related to AMC in any way. I don't think that they are connected to them in the sense, like in a business aspect, aside from this obvious deal. But Shudder is doing some different things than other streaming services. I think that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy it. Now, I picked up Shudder not long after Christmas, right after I dropped Disney Plus. I picked up Shudder because originally Purity Sin wanted to watch Creepshow with me because she knew I'd really like it, and so I wound up watching that, and I started watching a bunch of other stuff on there. Now, for those of you who remember Joe Bob Briggs from the old late night movie shows, he had kind of an Elvira thing basically, but it was a different type of deal. It wasn't just obviously it wasn't a big breasted woman with a lot of cleavage. He's a general horror fan and stuff like that, but they do live content on the streaming service, which is different than stuff like Netflix and Hulu and things like that. They're not really, as far as I'm not sure about Hulu, but I'm pretty sure Netflix, they are not doing any kind of live content in terms of stuff that is airing live that you have to tune in for like a television station. But Shudder is doing that with the Joe Bob Briggs stuff, as well as kind of jumping the boundaries, because it was something that was kind of interesting. And again, this was something that Joe Bob Briggs mentioned to me, or I shouldn't say mentioned to me, but mentioned on one of his film specials, because he has his little monologue at the beginning, and he's talking about Netflix, and he's talking about he always had this kind of reasoning, like, why wouldn't Netflix put their movies in theaters? They'd make a buttload of money, because we've been people have been over that before, why they don't distribute their own films. And the idea for it is that it's not in their DNA, which I think is something that's very interesting, is the idea that Netflix is so against the idea of traditional television entertainment that they are not, or traditional forms of digesting entertainment, television and films and stuff like that, in terms of, going to a theater or watching, a television station and waiting for episodes to come out and things like that, that they are unwilling to compromise to the point where they are going to put things in theaters. Now, whether or not that's a business decision in terms of, they just don't want to, they don't want to pay for the distribution and stuff like that. It's far cheaper to just stream it online, which it is. But I feel like with some of those more big budget movies they have, if they're successful on the network, I see no reason why you wouldn't be able to put them in theaters. If you think that they're going to be a relative success, you have people that are going to be in some of their movies coming up that are huge box office draws. Stuff like people like Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson. Gal Gadot, I think, is going to be in another one upcoming. They have Red Notice is one, and I think there's a few other ones. And then they just had The Irishman. They've had Oscar-nominated films, which they also had to have limited theatrical releases for, simply because that's the only way they're going to get nominated. Um, so it's very, very odd to me that they wouldn't do that. And Shudder appears to be kind of bridging that gap right now. Now, obviously, Shudder is not really, they're not in the business yet because they're relatively small. They're not in the business of actually making their own films in terms of making an actual full-length theatrical film. They're mostly just doing television shows, anthologies, you know, movie shows, again, like the Joe Bob Briggs specials, stuff like that, but mostly television shows and maybe some lower budgeted films. Nothing that's going to garner you a lot at the box office if you were to release it in theaters, but licensing out their more popular shows to television is not a bad idea. And ultimately, I think that's going to bring them in more money. Now, the question is, would the balance of that be, you know, they're going to get money, but they lose the exclusivity of having that show on their network, because now people can watch it on AMC if they want to. But I think this could also work in their favor as a form of advertising for having people subscribe to their network. And I also, if you're a horror fan, I would recommend you subscribe to it. It has a bunch of, you know, Italian horror and 80s B movie classics. And you know, you're not going to find The Shining and some other stuff like that on there. You'll find a lot of slasher movies. It's mostly a lot of low budget horror because they can't afford a whole lot right now. But stuff like Creepshow is amazing. I would recommend it in a heartbeat. But you know, and it's only, I think, $5.99 a month, if I remember correctly, $5 or $6.99 a month, which is a steal. It's basically almost equivalent, or maybe a little bit less than Disney Plus. So, you know, honestly, if you're a horror fan, I would recommend it. But I think it's interesting that they're doing this, and I think it's going to help them diversify, and it's going to set them apart from a lot of their competitors, like the Netflixes and the Hulus. And the thing is, they operate in a niche. You know, Shudder isn't, you know, they're not going to, you know, there's some comedy stuff on there too, but it's mostly, you know, it's horror comedy. It's not, you know, straight comedy. You're not going to find Dumb and Dumber on Shudder. Or you're not going to find a lot of other stuff. You're not going to find like, you know, you're not going to find dramas and you know, love stories and stuff like that. You're not going to find most of those types of movies on Shudder. You're not going to find The Notebook on Shudder. You're going to find horror movies, and you know, they know that they're in a niche group. But the thing is with the horror community in general is that once you have a core group of people that kind of rally around your franchise or what you're putting out as media, those people tend to stick with you as long as you don't screw that up. You know, horror people have been neglected by the cinema for a number of years now, for the most part. I mean, there's been a few gems here and there, but horror is not what it used to be, and I've been over that before. I did a video on the state of horror not long, actually maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, around Halloween last year, and you know, it's one of those, you know, it's one of those things that really doesn't, you know, horror fans want something to latch onto. They want good horror. They want to be able to watch something that's really, really good. And I think Shudder can give that to horror fans in a lot of ways, especially again with the new content. I can't say enough how much I enjoyed Creepshow. I loved every episode almost. And you know, it's a vignette thing. If you're familiar with the original television, the original films that came out in the early '80s, you'll be familiar with, you know, how sort of the formatting works. It's a show. They have two short stories. The entire episode itself is about 40 minutes long, and they're all written by different horror people. They all have different tones, but they're all amazing if you love horror. And like I said, I can't mention that enough. But I'm curious what you think. Are you excited that Creepshow is coming to AMC later this year? Do you have Shudder already? Have you already seen Creepshow? What do you think of it? Or are you thinking about getting Shudder, or maybe are you thinking about, you know, you don't really want to get it, but you're kind of hyped because you want to watch Creepshow and it's going to be on AMC now. So, you know, again, put your thoughts in the comments below. I like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?